All right, CCJ 241, Introduction to Law Enforcement. We are now on to Chapter 2 and some additional information. And is a career in law enforcement for me? And what do those in law enforcement look for in a career in law enforcement? All right, so people think, I thought this because when I wanted to be a cop, it's a serious question to ponder. Are you ready to possibly take a life or to protect yours or that of another? When we went into my academy, and you got to remember, we already went through the whole entire hiring process of the written test and the oral board and the background and the physical fitness and seeing the doctor and the psychologist, all of that stuff and the psych eval. But we're in the academy, we're in week, I think 3 or 4, and one of the candidates goes, you know what? Until I started coming to this academy and seeing all the videos and started learning what the job was, I never really thought about taking a life, and I can't do it. And that person dropped out of the academy, and we're glad that that person did because it is a part of the job. Are you prepared to see the awful things you have to see at crime scenes? Are you able to control your anger if you feel somebody's committed an egregious crime or you see him commit that crime? Are you able to uphold the law that that person is innocent until proven guilty? You have to ask yourself all these things, and those going into law enforcement, believe me, do, either through the testing process or like in where I saw, and this was back before you had a lot of the internet and everything you have today, but at least during the academy or before, you should be asking yourself that question before you actually step into being a police officer. All right, also you got to know yourself. Not every person would make a good police officer, and that doesn't make it wrong. It just means that it takes a certain type of personality. The job is very multifaceted, so it takes a lot of different types of personalities, but some people have some triggers, and that would not be good in law enforcement. For example, if you got angry fast and you had an uncontrollable temper, that wouldn't be good as a cop. So you got to know yourself, and in the textbook there are a number of different personality tests you can take and assessment tools that are available that you can look at your strengths and weaknesses. There's even some links I put in there that let you know, after you answer a bunch of questions, what type of career is best for your personality. So make sure you know those things before you start saying you want to get into a certain type of career. There's also, this is another 16 personality factor questionnaire that is great at predicting future behavior of candidates interested in becoming police officers. Here's another self-assessment, and again, this is during the psychological evaluation you'll take. These are a lot of the things that the psychologist is looking for. So it's really good to have a handle on this and look at all these things that could cause you issues, like I said, not all of them, but could cause you issues if you want to be in policing. All right, so we're going to talk about the different careers that are available in the policing field. The first is called commissioned or sworn employees. So that is a police officer that has gone through a state police academy, certified academy, and has been certified as a commissioned or police officer that has powers of arrest, number one, and can carry a handgun and utilize that handgun on behalf of the agency. So if that person is commissioned or sworn, or they say that person is a commissioned officer or a sworn officer, that means that they've been through the academy, that they have arresting powers, and they carry a handgun. All right, not everyone in law enforcement is called a police officer, strangely enough. So you call somebody a police officer, so Officer Jones, if they work for a city or municipality, such as Ashland Police Department. You call someone a deputy if they're a commissioned or sworn employee of a county, such as Jackson County Sheriff's Office. Those are deputies. You call someone a trooper if they're commissioned or sworn employee of the state. So here in Oregon, that'd be Oregon State Police. In Nevada, that's Nevada Highway Patrol. In California, that's California Highway Patrol. And then finally, an agent is a commissioned or sworn employee of the federal government. So here's some different photos of uniforms, and we'll go over these, but if you look in the upper left, a police officer that works for a city or municipality wears some type of blue. Normally you see him in a navy blue. Ever so often you'll see him in light blue, but it's some type of blue. Your sheriff's deputies will wear some combination of tan, brown, or forest green. Your state troopers, most are in a navy blue, but you do have some highway patrol, like California Highway Patrol, that's work in a county or for the county, or they just have tan or brown uniforms. So these are most of the time, but it does change. At the very bottom, you have federal agents. Federal agents, when they go to work, most days they wear business suits. And if they are serving a search warrant or going out in the field, they will have just unique uniforms that will identify which agency they're with. All right, so federal law enforcement is really different. I always tell people that are looking to go into federal law enforcement, look at what you want to go into. There's over 40 different agencies just with the Department of Homeland Security you can be a commissioned or sworn officer. And so therefore, and every different educational requirement is different. For the FBI, for example, you have to have a bachelor's degree in the sciences or accounting or a foreign language, or you have to have your law degree, which means you're a lawyer. Or you can have your bachelor's degree in anything, but they want to see 3 years full-time work experience in the field. So, for example, I know some federal agents that worked for police departments and became detectives and did that for at least 3 years before they applied for federal law enforcement. So make sure you look through all the different federal law enforcement that there are out there and see the different educational requirements depending on what you're interested in. All right, so let's do some interesting facts here. So first of all, looking historically back, the United States Marshals were the first federal law enforcement agency to be established, and the Secret Service was founded in 1865. All right, and they were originally created to combat counterfeiting of U.S. currency, so that was it. And then today, the Secret Service's mission is actually twofold, where they not only protect dignitaries, president, vice president, and others, family members, but they also investigate crimes into financial infrastructure. I remember one time I had only been on a couple months, and I had gone to a bar. They had turned in a suspect and somebody that had submitted counterfeit cash to them, and I was actually called to testify at the preliminary hearing. And a Secret Service agent showed up because they have to do with crimes against the financial infrastructure, and they were showing that it was in fact the dollar bills were in fact counterfeit, not real. All right, so the Department of Homeland Security is huge. Just like I said, they have over 40 different agencies, and it was created to coordinate the efforts of local, federal, and state authorities at stopping terrorism. Right now they employ 250,000 people, so lots of people that work for the Department of Homeland Security. So if you go to USA Jobs on the internet, I'm not sure if it's .org or .net or .com, but it's USA Jobs. That's where all the federal jobs are listed that are actively hiring, and it's a great place to go to get an idea of what's out there. All right, let's look at state law enforcement. So, and these are all generalities because every jurisdiction, every agency is different. However, these are, again, generalities. So your state law enforcement, for example, Oregon State Police, are responsible for traffic enforcement along highways and interstates. There are also agencies such as Oregon State Police that are responsible for general investigation duties, and they even have all different divisions, like an explosive division. Some are more heavily oriented around traffic, and some do a lot of other things as well. There is a superintendent appointed by the governor that is over state law enforcement agencies generally. And again, a state law enforcement officer is called a trooper. And again, I went over the color of their uniforms. County law enforcement. There's approximately 3,142 counties in the U.S. that have a sheriff's office. A sheriff is elected by the people. So when you have a sheriff, that person has to actually go out there, and there's an election, and they get voted by the people. The people that work under the sheriff are called deputies, and we've gone over the colors of their uniforms. All right, your municipality or city police officers, and again, you may see all of these again, work for local or cities such as Ashland Police, Talent Police, San Francisco Police, North Las Vegas Police, things like that. The chief of police is not elected. The chief of police is hired by the city manager and mayor with input from the city council. And again, from city police, those are called police officers. All right, there's other kind of various different law enforcement officers as well. In fact, in my area, I think we had 15 or 20 different agencies, but you had tribal police officers. There's university police officers. Now, there's different types of university police officers depending on the university. For example, Southern Oregon University, we have public safety officers. Those are not commissioned or sworn employees. They're civilians, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you do have a number of larger universities that do have commissioned or sworn police officers that have arresting powers and do carry a gun. So for those universities, such as Southern Oregon University, that have public safety officers, they work very closely with their local police departments for when they need somebody arrested, or if they have a violent situation where they need an officer to respond. Also, your corrections and jail. There's local jail population, there's prison population, there's military population. You need correction officers. There's parole and probation to look over parolees and community supervision. There's conservation police officers, federal game wardens, state wardens, gaming control officers, school police officers, school resource officers. Most of these are commissioned or sworn. So just lots of different law enforcement officers out there. All right, is there jurisdictional overlap? So which agency investigates? That's huge. Jurisdiction is important. When an officer gets to a call, obviously the first thing is everybody's safe. Does anybody need medical? But after that, it's which jurisdiction it is. Because let's say you have a homicide, which is a murder, and you go to Talent, but Ashland Police Department shows up. It should be Talent Police Department that investigates that. And then depending what court it goes to, depending what crime it is very important. So jurisdiction is very important because of what happens afterwards through the courts or through the investigation. All right, so now we already went over commissioned and sworn. Now we've got civilian positions, which are called non-commissioned and non-sworn. So you may be saying, hey, I don't want to go in, I don't want to be a cop, I don't want to carry a gun, but there's lots of civilian positions related around law enforcement. Let's look at some of those. For example, some park police officers are civilians. So, for example, locally, Ashland Police Department hires civilian park police officers throughout the summer that are not commissioned. They don't go through an academy, they don't carry a gun, they don't have arresting powers, but they're civilian positions. Where I was from, our marshals actually looked over the park. So it just depends on where you're at and where your jurisdiction is. But there's community service officers. This was a great stepping stone. This is a civilian position. You drive a car that's marked with the law enforcement, but that you're a volunteer or civilian. And a lot of these positions are paid, and you take reports or you do traffic control. And it's a great stepping position to find out, do I really want to be a cop? Because you work around cops a lot, you're going to calls, you're dealing with citizens and taking reports and listening to them. So it's very cool stepping stone position. There's reserve, auxiliary officers, cadets, explorers when you're 16 or 18, and then obviously volunteer work. So what careers are available in social services? That's getting huge. My division, we had a crime prevention division, and we had crime prevention specialists that were civilians. We also had a domestic violence representative that on every domestic violence report that came in, that person would contact the victims to see if they needed any social services. So there's a lot of different careers out there in the social service world. There's also crime analysis. That's where you're looking at all the reports and crime and preparing reports for the department. There's a records clerk where you deal with records and getting police reports, or property clerk where the officers are turning in evidence and you're controlling that and doing a chain of command. There's also 911 dispatchers, communications, and in a lot of those places you have call takers, which is kind of the stepping stone again to become a 911 dispatcher. So lots of civilian careers. All right, so what careers are available in the crime scene investigation unit? Well, first of all, know the difference between a civilian CSI and a commissioned sworn CSI. So I was a cop first. I was a commissioned sworn officer. I went through an academy. I carried a gun. I had arresting powers. And after a while, a position became opening in crime scene investigation department. And I tested and did an interview and went to an autopsy, and I was hired. And then they trained me. I went through a 12-week academy for CSI. So I was what was called a commission sworn CSI. Well, what happened is after the financial crisis that we talked about in Chapter 1 of 2007 and 2008, departments didn't have the money to spend and risk taking police officers on the road that they weren't replacing and put them in CSI. So a lot of agencies started hiring those that have education but were civilians. So some agencies out there have civilians. You have to have a certain type of degree. All agencies are kind of different. And some you have to be a commission sworn cop first, and then you go and test. So I always tell people that are interested in CSI but want to be a civilian CSI and not be a cop first, be willing to travel. Because like locally, there's not a lot of positions that open up because people get into those careers for 20, 30 years. And so if you're willing to travel and go different places and get your experience, you can definitely get a career in that. They are out there, and mostly there's a bachelor's degree with sciences, chemistry, and there are actually some colleges out there that do focus on CSI. So it just kind of depends on where you're interested in going. All right, forensics. So what's the difference between CSI and forensics? Well, as you see from the last picture, CSI, those go to the crime scene and you're collecting evidence and you're doing preliminary testing of evidence at the scene. But if you have DNA testing or generally more intricate lab work, that's going to go to the forensic technician. And those are people that generally stay in the lab all day long. They're not going to the field. They're just reading the reports and doing the more intricate testing forensically. All right, so now if you've identified, hey, I want to go into law enforcement, or I like the civilian side, or I like to be a lawyer, how do you locate open positions? The first thing I recommend doing is you volunteer or do a student internship in the field you like. This is going to teach you so much. It's great for your resume. It's a stepping stone, and it's really important in the CCJ field. And to do that, you need to start working on your portfolio and resume and start getting some training, because believe me, in these classes, you're getting a lot of training and you need to make sure you document that. So in the textbook, I go into this further. All right, this ends chapter 2. We'll see you for the next chapter.